Hello and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have an interesting stranger on every single week. Today we have Laura, the owner of the Wicker Park Inn. So, Laura, how did you get involved first with the Wicker Park Inn?
So it was owned by two gentlemen, Stephen and David, and they were clients of ours at the bakery. And so, I guess we'll go into this now, right? Yeah. So I also owned the Alliance Bakery back in the day. I don't own it currently.
Really?
Yeah.
I went there not too long ago, actually.
It's a great bakery.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a Wicker Park institution.
Yeah.
So I had the privilege of owning the Alliance Bakery for about 5 years back in the early 2000s.
How did you get into the bakery game?
Well, so interestingly enough, I was working in advertising, and I just have an allegiance for the Alliance Bakery and all things kind of, retro and really kind of really beautiful. They make beautiful cakes, and it's just very old school style. So I saw a listing for the space, and I just kind of jumped at the opportunity of purchasing it.
Wow.
I didn't know anything about owning a bakery or a cafe. I've worked in cafes before, but I was married at the time, and it was an opportunity for us to kind of just do something on our own versus working for someone else.
Right.
And so we purchased it in, I want to say 2002. And then one of our clients was the owner of the Wicker Park Inn, and they would come and buy pastries from us, and they would serve it for breakfast to their guests. And they were moving off to France, and I thought I was still working full time and running the bakery.
Yeah.
So this was my opportunity to kind of quit the full time gig and run the B&B and have the bakery and the B&B at the same time.
So what clicked for you to be like, I want to own a business now? Like, what changed in your life? Because if you're sort of like, I guess, tinkering with the idea of maybe doing that, but then, just one day deciding it.
It's probably best that you don't know what you're getting into, because if you know all the parameters, I think a lot of people, it's like having a baby. If you've never had a baby, you're like, oh, that's so great. Maybe I'll have a baby. And then you have one, you're like, oh my God, my life is over. Like, why didn't anyone tell me I'm not going to get any sleep? My life is going to completely change. And then it's good. Then you realize how to live your life, having a family. And there's so many rewards to it. So owning a business, buying a business, it was one of those things where I felt it was an opportunity, and it kind of spoke to me. The bakery, it was just such a beautiful place, and it's still around, and it's doing really well. And I liked the fact that I had something to do with that and kind of keeping it alive. And then I sold the bakery actually when I had my first daughter, like a year afterwards. I just couldn't do the bakery, the B&B, and the baby. So, but it was just a labor of love, and I really enjoyed having it. But maybe not knowing what I was getting into kind of allowed me to just sort of feel my way through it. Having a passion for, I think, the things that I really like and that I really enjoy, and just sort of letting the consumer kind of help dictate what went well and what didn't go well. So
before you bought it, who owned it? Was it a long-standing family or something?
Well, previous to, it was Heidi Hedeker who owned it prior to myself. And she owned it probably for a period of 10, maybe 15 years. And before her was this older family, like it's an institution here in the neighborhood, but it was always a Polish bakery. And then when Heidi sold it to me, she was just going through a tough time. Her dad had just passed away, and he was also a big part of the business. So she went on to become a professor over at Kendall College, and I think she does really well as sort of like just a chef professor teaching others how to do what she does for, just has a passion for baking. So I just kind of kept the tradition alive. I changed a few things because the neighborhood was changing. It was no longer a Polish neighborhood. And there were certain products that people were asking for or looking for. So in a way, I had
like the transitioner a little bit.
Yeah. And not trying to like get rid of the old stuff, because I really do love all the classics, right? But the neighborhood was definitely at that point where there were new people coming into the neighborhood. So
it's like the balance of like keeping the traditional and also staying relevant still.
Exactly.
And so you own that bakery, and then that you owned the bakery and the Wicker Park Inn at the same time for a little bit?
Yeah. So as of 2004, I purchased the Wicker Park Inn and ran both the bakery and the B&B. And it was sort of a symbiotic relationship, right? I only had 3 guest rooms at the time, so it wasn't difficult to manage the guests and keep everything running really well. And then I would also manage the retail staff at the bakery, so it'd kind of go back and forth. There was only
3 bedrooms in there? Was it a lot smaller?
It was just one side of the building initially. I lived on the first floor. Again, with my then husband, my ex now. And it wasn't until we started a family that I realized you can't have a baby in a B&B. Are you kidding me? Like, no one wants to hear a baby crying in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So
how relaxing.
Yeah, not very cozy.
Yeah.
And also just for me, anxiety-wise, like I just wanted to have my personal space.
Right, yeah.
So found a place just across the street from the B&B, luckily enough. So I literally live just like 200 feet away.
Do you still live there now?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Well, that's nice though, kind of, because if you're across the street in case anything happens.
I can look out my window and I can see exactly what's going on. So while, there is this sort of a little bit of separation of church and state, I'm literally right there on premise. So
wow. Yeah. I've walked past your house so many times, I just never knew. But yeah, because it's a very big, and how many, do you have 11 rooms now?
Yeah, so we have 9 guest rooms at the B&B itself, and then I rent out to the apartments below me where I live currently.
Oh, okay.
So I live in a 3-flat. The garden unit and the first floor are rented out for short-term rental.
Okay.
So people who are traveling with groups or families, the apartments work out very nicely. And then the B&B has 9 guest rooms. So couples will generally stay, sometimes a couple with a child, but yeah.
So how, in your estimations during this business, how are Airbnbs like very different than other hospitality institutions?
I have to say, like, I've been on the Airbnb platform since it first started. I was really hip to the idea of people staying locally and experiencing neighborhoods versus staying downtown in a hotel.
Sure.
I think the only difference between an Airbnb versus a bed and breakfast that I operate is that I'm fully licensed. I have people on staff there 24/7.
Right.
I'm also there to, answer any questions. I think
it's not like your house and then someone stays there sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's fully serviced. We have someone there and we kind of operate like a hotel, and that you're going to find that sort of level of service. And an Airbnb is great, but a lot of it seems to be more of a DIY experience, right? You get your keys out of a lockbox, you check yourself in.
You're doing everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, instead of having someone help.
Which is kind of nice. I mean, some people like to travel anonymously and not be bothered and have their own apartment in the city.
Yeah,
exactly. So live like a local is like kind of the mantra for Airbnb, and that's sort of our mantra as well. But at the same time, with some guidance and a professional there to kind of walk you through like where to go to eat and just the check-in process as well. So
yeah. Because I read an article about you talking about like when the hotels were coming around here, and like, so how did you compete with like massive chains that presumably can like cut down rates at any point and stuff, you know what I mean?
Well, I think the benefit for me, and there's another hotel that will be opening up soon, the Hyatt Place.
They seem like to be opening them like crazy everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Can't
that's
get enough of them.
The story of Chicago, right? We're developing like wildfire. I mean, there's so much going on, and it's good. I mean, it means that the market is demanding more rooms. People are coming to Chicago and they're experiencing that. I mean, our city just has so much to offer. We've got sports, we have restaurants, we have nightlife. I mean, I don't know. I personally love Chicago.
Are you from Chicago?
I am. Yeah. I grew up in the southwest suburbs. So I went away to college and came back, and I don't know. I have an affinity towards Chicago and this neighborhood in particular.
Yeah, because we're from Milwaukee. But they have a weird thing where like they keep putting up hotels and apartment buildings. And I'm like, who's moving here though?
Yeah.
You know, where are all the people? I feel like there's a critical mass of like apartments or hotels, and they haven't hit it, I guess, yet. But I'm always amazed by that.
Yeah, I think here in Chicago, we do have conventions that come in. And so there's been, in the past, there just weren't enough hotel rooms, to be honest. And now I feel like there's a surplus of hotel rooms.
Right.
I think people are sort of realizing that we have hit that critical mass where the supply is definitely greater than the demand.
Right.
Except for when you go into like peak times of the year,
Sure.
Maybe the Chicago Marathon where everybody comes to Chicago.
Right.
So, I mean, Lollapalooza used to be like a big draw, and it still is for me because people want to hang out in Wicker Park. But I feel like, it's not that massive where you need to have 100 extra hotels. So,
right. Yeah. And that sort of helps you almost, though, because then if there's like a surplus, it's like, well, what makes you different? And you have a very distinct thing that makes you different.
Yeah, I do. And it's interesting because I am not a hotel. I'm not an Airbnb. I'm something in between.
Right.
So I think what we offer that's different is also what makes us very successful. We do that elevated kind of B&B experience, and yet at the same time we're here locally. And just, overall, I think we give people that sort of something they weren't expecting and are pleasantly surprised when they do find us.
Yeah. So, because you are doing very well with that. So how are people reacting? And obviously you're expanding too. I heard are you expanding more?
No. So with Chicago, the ordinance is that you're only allowed to have 11 guest rooms if you're a bed and breakfast.
Chicago.
Well, I think they can, and here's the rub, because I think that they want to control businesses in a certain way to make sure that they're regulated and maintained very well. But there are some things that they don't regulate, right? The Airbnbs of the world. And that's the backside of things that I realize that Airbnb is a platform for anyone to be a host. And you do well, and that's great. But I feel like in some cases, those that don't do well don't kind of necessarily have a way. Nobody has a way to like shut them down.
Oh, sure.
So, hopefully, when customers see that there's like bad experiences, they don't go there anymore. But for me, I mean, I have to follow a certain code of conduct. We do get inspected. So we are, fully inspected, fully licensed.
And I feel like that should happen with Airbnbs. I feel like there should be some level of for safety precautions.
Right.
At least.
I think as long as there are people who are willing to try it out, then obviously that's our self-regulation, right? It's like people are the ones who are regulating it.
Right. It's just unfortunate that someone has to have that experience to do that,
Yeah. You have to have one bad experience and then all of a sudden it's like...
It's a waterfall. Yeah. So with the apartments that are under you, do you put those on Airbnb or do you not?
I do, actually. Yeah. And, it used to be that... I like the Airbnb platform again because it is about staying locally in neighborhoods.
Yeah.
We've been pretty successful on the Airbnb platform. My prices are a little bit higher than, your standard Airbnb.
Yeah.
Simply because, again, we offer the full service and we are fully licensed. And so there's other kinds of just additional amenities that people get when they stay with us.
Right.
But it hasn't seemed to... hinder us on the platform at all. I think people really appreciate that and they want that. And I think Airbnb is actually trying to include more hotels or B&Bs or boutique kind of hotels onto their platform.
Yeah. So what are some like really positive guest experiences that you have? Because I'm sure you get a good amount of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We are starting to become very popular for full house rentals.
Oh, wow.
So
all 11 rooms are booked?
All 11 rooms, or at least all 9 guest rooms within the property itself. Maybe they don't include the apartments.
Yeah.
People will rent out the full house because that way they have the whole run of house.
Yeah.
For weddings in particular, they can all get ready there. The photographer comes and takes photos.
Because you have a big space, like event space sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's kind of nice. Everyone has the hair and makeup done on site. We offer full service, like a full breakfast every morning. So everyone kind of gathers in the kitchen.
Oh, nice.
They graze all day, get ready for their wedding. And the chaos of the day in and of itself, it's just like nutty. But then everyone's all housed under one roof. So there's no additional coordinating that happens.
Where's Jamie?
Yeah.
Oh,
Jamie's right there.
Yeah, exactly.
So she gets her hair done, then she goes back to her room, and it's kind of nice. You get to see this sort of orchestra of players within like a really special weekend, right? Of someone's wedding. So that's become really popular for us, is like hosting a family or the bridal party, and everyone kind of getting ready and really enjoying the weekend.
Yeah.
And that's really where we shine, because we do provide that kind of level of service where we take care of everything. So from shuttle service to breakfast to just anything that the bride or the couple really needs.
Do you get bad guests at bed and breakfast? I feel like it sort of lends itself to not get it.
Well, I mean, you can never really fully vet everyone who comes through your door.
Yeah. I just feel like someone who was like, I'm going to go to a bed and breakfast, they're not going to be terrible.
Well,
I don't know. Maybe
let's hope. I mean, I think people walk in the door and they're like, oh, this is fancy. But I'm like, well, yeah, you saw the photos online, right?
Yeah.
So, and then, but also, I mean, okay, so this neighborhood, we have a ton of like live music and nightlife, and every now and then we'll get some person who's just had a little too much fun.
Sure.
And they like to continue partying. And of course, we do have quiet hours. Like, you know, we want to be respectful of other guests. So we'll have to knock on someone's door from time to time. You have to turn the party down. Like, it's not going to happen. So, but for the most part, or people walk in and maybe they've reserved through a third party like Expedia, and they didn't realize we were a bed and breakfast versus a traditional hotel.
Sure.
Generally, once they check into their room, they realize, oh, this place is swanky. It's fine. We're good. But, it's just feeling someone out, because there are so many different ways that you can reserve, and we like to have that personal experience. We'll always reach out to a guest to find out when they're coming to check in, offer them parking if they have a car. Like, we want to get all this information from them, like, do you have any food allergies, because we're preparing breakfast in the morning, please let us know if you're gluten intolerant. So and then some folks get kind of put off by that because they're just not used to getting those kinds of questions from a traditional hotel.
Why do you want to know?
What's it to
what
you?
What are you doing? I'm trying to help you.
I'm actually trying to be nice.
So what is something like in your journey of being sort of an entrepreneur and buying these and owning different businesses that you didn't really see come, or that have been like challenging for you that you didn't really know?
I think the thing that's really difficult is, it's actually been interesting, right? So I did a major renovation in 2018. I saw that there was a new hotel that was opening up down the street, the Roby. And I thought to myself, well, that's it. I used to not have any competition aside from Airbnb, and I really had no problem booking up my rooms. Now that the new hotel is going to be opening up, that's going to really severely impact my business. Maybe I don't do this anymore, or if I do decide to do it, continue on. It was really re-envisioning my space and re-envisioning my business. Because I'm small, I'm able to kind of pivot. So I saw the opportunity to expand. Luckily enough, my neighbor was moving, and that was really my sort of impetus for like doubling down and doing a complete renovation and expanding the business and providing my guests what I thought was the new level of service and new level of amenities. Which, when I first got started, again, I purchased the business from two owners who, back in 2004. So things have changed a lot since then. High-speed internet access to begin with. So just in general, like, there was a lot that needed to be upgraded. And I saw this as an opportunity to kind of just change it up and make it really basically, bring it into the 2020s. So,
Were the owners that you bought it from, were they long-term owners of Wicker Park Inn?
I think that they started it in 2001. So really only had it for a few years. And usually that's the mark. Someone's told me like 3 years or 3 months. That's usually when you find out whether or not this is for you. And the boys, I call them the boys because it was Stephen and David, and they decided that it wasn't for them. And they moved on to France.
The country.
They totally left. And luckily enough, because they were moving, out of the country, they left everything behind. So all the furniture was still there. I basically bought the house and the business. It was kind of two separate transactions. They trained me on how to, check in a guest, how to place a reservation. But again, this is all 15 years ago. It was completely different operation. Yeah.
So the building you're in, though, is it very old, right?
It's a historic building.
Yeah.
There aren't many row houses here in Chicago. They're mostly on the East Coast. So it's even a rare building to have in Chicago.
Yeah. It's a really cool looking building. What was it originally?
It was just probably back in the day, probably a 2-story or 2-flat. Probably 2 families lived on each side.
Okay.
This neighborhood, from what my architect tells me, it was like, just a lot of families kind of living together here in Bugtown, Wicker Park. So, and then as the neighborhood started gentrifying, people started buying these properties and turning them into single family homes. When I purchased the building, it was the previous owners were living on the first floor and renting out the 3 bedrooms upstairs, but it was kind of converted to a single family home at that point.
Okay. So what are your plans for the future with this? Are you going to buy another bed and breakfast?
Well, again, the city of Chicago only allows one. Yeah, no. Well, okay. And I don't know if I should say anything. I have no. So the idea is, and I don't know if I should. I'm always looking for an opportunity. And I think the one thing that kind of hurts me more than anything is I've been in business for 15 years. And sometimes people are like, oh, I didn't even know you were here. I'm like, oh, I'm doing it. And I have an advertising background. So I'm doing a really bad job of marketing. Yeah. So I'm thinking about just maybe possibly doing something where I increase my visibility.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's like Division, when I owned the Alliance Bakery, was kind of a seedy street. There was a Gold Star across the street and then Zakopane next door.
Yep.
And then Cutthroat Liquors down the street. So, kind of like 3
Gold
really...
Star's still there.
Yes, it is.
They still made it.
Zakopane's still there too.
Yeah.
But now you've got Target, Foxtrot. I mean, it's like all the stuff that's happening, which is nice. It's a different flavor, a different vibe to the neighborhood.
Sure.
And I'd like to keep that local flavor here. Like I want it to be independently owned or locally owned kind of businesses that thrive.
Where can people find information about Wicker Park Inn and everything like that, and book also the apartments as well?
Yeah. So our website is www.wickerparkinn.com. We always like it when people book directly, but if you find us on other sources, by all means.
Does that because they get like a portion of your rooms or something?
So it's basically when someone books third party, that third party receives a commission. And it's fine. I mean, it's another way for me to just sort of advertise my space. But it's sort of, again, because it's third party, it's a little bit removed. So I don't get as much information.
Yeah, sure.
No.
Yeah. So go to the website, and then are you guys on like social media and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah, a ton.
Yeah.
So Instagram, it's at Wicker Park Inn. Facebook, Pinterest.
Oh, you're on Pinterest?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to go check that out.
Do you have a Pinterest account? No.
Actually, I think I do, but I don't know how to get on. I made it so long ago, I think, and I haven't checked it.
Well, I mean, I just like boards and stuff and creating ideas. So,
but that's good for a bed and breakfast because you're like the pictures on your website are really nice. Like your rooms are really beautiful and stuff.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I feel like Pinterest is a place for that.
Yeah. And then we give suggestions on like the best coffee shops in town or places, what to do when you're in the city, like the best cafes, things like that. So yeah.
Because there's like so many of those lists. When we initially moved here, there's like, oh, this is the best coffee shop. No, this list is the best, Yeah. There's just too many.
Yeah.
There's too many lists.
How many are those in Milwaukee? Do you guys have a top 10 for best bars in Milwaukee?
Oh, there's too many bars. That's the thing. Every list is different. If you would have said coffee shops, there's only a certain amount that you probably could put on a list in Milwaukee. But thank you for coming out. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. So fun. Go check out the Wicker Park Inn. Go book your stay. Live local.
Yeah. Check it out and have fun. If you're in the neighborhood, feel free to if you don't want to stay overnight, we also have experiences there. We do cooking classes.
Oh, cool.
You can rent out the kitchen for a private dinner party or private event. So
if you want to be fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not have to clean your own kitchen.
That's the best part. Yeah. You don't have to clean up afterwards. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.